Right, this is Paul Wood at Twist or Stick meets Jon White, MD of Elmwood, London. Hi John, how are you?
Hi Paul, yeah, very good, thank you.
Nice to see you again.
And you, mate.
So we'll start off with a bit about your career to date. Can you just summarise that, go through your highs and lows?
Yeah, really varied, Paul. Bizarrely, I left school at 17 and took an apprenticeship at British Aerospace,
right,
building military aeroplanes up in North Yorkshire. So I'm a trained aircraft engineer, which is the first interesting thing.
Yeah.
Did that for about 5-6 years. Got my qualifications in parallel with doing it, good old-fashioned apprenticeship. And then ended up needing a smaller company to kind of get my hands more dirty than the big business I was in. So I ended up joining a company called RB Lincoln, which built cranes and excavators in the building industry. Did 3.5 years doing that, saw some real highs and lows of building booms and bust as well. And then from there joined Kimberly-Clark, American corporation, again as an engineer, but a manufacturing engineer. Helped them build a brand new factory to launch Huggies nappies in Europe back in 1992. Did 5 years doing that, ended up as the operations manager for that mill. And then through an MBA, so I did an MBA in parallel, turned to the dark side of marketing. So with Kimberly-Clark was actually moved from the wilds of North Lincolnshire down to Surrey, to European headquarters. To cut my teeth as a brand manager, so brand manager, marketing manager, eventually marketing director, working on brands like Huggies, Kleenex, Andrex, so lots of different consumer brands. And overall did 21 years with Kimberly-Clark when I combined the manufacturing as well as the engine, as well as the marketing piece of it. And then 18 months ago I decided it was time for me to do something very different. I was like 45 at the time, give my age away. And decided it was time to really try something a bit diverse, and so I decided to leave, left Kimberly-Clark, and originally set up a consultancy business with a partner of mine, working in the space between agencies and clients, helping them find and build stronger, better relationships with each other and understand each other better. And then through there I actually got talking to Elmwood, who had employed while I was at Kimberly-Clark to do some design work for me. And long and short of it was that we got talking, and obviously I liked them because I'd been a client. And eventually decided that we'd have a good time working together, and so hence here I am as MD of London. So
tell us a bit about Elmwood.
Yeah, Elmwood's it's obviously a very well-known brand design consultancy. Grew up in Leeds, 30 odd years old, still independent, which I think is a huge part of their DNA. 6 studios around the world now, so a global business, but still holding a lot of those kind of grounded northern roots from its upbringing in Leeds. I think it's honest, it's open, it's entrepreneurial, it's dynamic, being independent. If we want to do something, we go and get it done. And as you probably know, big thing is its backbone of believing in effectiveness from design as kind of a key selling point. And I think that's, as a client, that's what sold me in the original places. That's my kind of language. And really important that design is shown to be able to give the client what they need at the end of the day.
I know you sort of touched on this already. I know you said spent a lot of your career client side. What was the sort of main decision makers in your head there that you make you make the switch?
The starting point was to do something really different. I mean, again, I needed some change, and I'd worked with so many agencies. In fact, my wife is an advertising agency, in the advertising agency and business, and I loved the idea of the dynamism and the variety. Having been in the rigour and depth of a client business, actually the breadth and diversity of the agency world was really appealing. I wouldn't have gone to any agency, so I didn't sit there and say, I just want to go to an agency. So it was really about the time and the moment, and Elmwood as an opportunity that got me there, but those were probably the drivers.
Along your career today, I mean, talking about sort of things like career advice, is there any piece that sort of stands out for you as the best piece you've been given throughout your career?
I think a couple of things. Being flexible. I think a lot of people kind of get very stuck in their careers and they believe that they should rely on their strengths. Actually, you build strengths by finding variety and diversity. I've made this choice very late in my career. I'd absolutely advocate people to try things like this early in their career when they don't have the dependency, and it's probably easier to change between things you do. And the other thing is, just have a voice. Don't be shy. people like people with an opinion. That's
Yeah.
what makes businesses go around. And so speak up, show your mind, show your personality.
Inspiration, so we talked a little bit earlier, but most inspirational people you've worked with or for, not upsetting anyone obviously.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I've met a lot of good people. There's a couple of people that stand out. A famous planner in the advertising and then design business, Beth Barry, who was head of Ogilvy Planning Worldwide and then ended up at Coley Portobello. I was very lucky to work with her at, I think, her peak, and on the Huggies project that we did was just a huge inspiration and learning process for me. And it's usually been people like planners. Those are the ones that kind of challenged your thinking. I've had a few bosses like that as well that have really challenged our thinking, but Beth is probably one of those that really does stand out.
Okay. Biggest creative brief you've had to work on or perhaps given out throughout your career?
The biggest challenge I was ever given was to turn around the Kleenex business in Europe, which sounds like one of those that's like when you start, but it was a ubiquitous brand. Everybody knows Kleenex, but they don't call them tissues, they're called Kleenex, but actually all our brand and commercial indicators were heading down. And that was everything from what does the brand stand for to what's the next innovation to how do we make more money in Switzerland. That was the toughest brief, but funny enough, it turned out to be the most creative work I've ever been involved in. The campaign let it out that relaunched Kleenex back in the early 2000s is still, I think, the pinnacle of my creative career in terms of things I was involved with.
And if you were to summarise the state of the creative industry at the moment, sort of looking at it from both perspectives, perhaps client side and the same one now on the agency side, what would you tell us? What would you say about it?
I think from an agency side, just starting there, I think it's the shoots of turnaround are definitely there, but it's really fragile. So I think it's there's some fantastic work going around, and I'm pleased to say there seems to be enough work going around for everybody, which I think is great to say. I think from a client point of view, we're in a huge transition. I think design and creativity are still not really understood by clients, and although they've got design teams now and design leaders within their business, I'm not sure they totally understand what design can bring to their business. So we're getting there, but I think we've still got a few steps to make to really have a client and design agency world that's fully aligned.
I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you were to speak to a younger you before you started on your career path, what advice would you give him?
Be braver, I think. Okay. I think I'd be braver. I've done some fantastic things within Kimberly-Clark, and do 21 years was immense in 2 different parts of my career. But I probably should have moved earlier and seen more diversity earlier, just because there's so much out there. I've learned more of that in the last year than I have for a long time. There's more interesting stuff out there to get involved in.
You talked about inspiration a little bit earlier, so in terms of things that you have seen or heard recently that you find inspiring, or things that inspire you particularly, what things stand out?
I think there's just different categories and different types of businesses that I think are really interesting. I've got involved with such diverse businesses in the last 9 months since I've been here. All the way from tech entertainment companies to government-backed innovation bodies to global FMCGs, and I think what's really inspiring for me is what you can take from one to give to the other. Things that you can learn on that journey. I think it speaks again to that variety and getting the breadth of experiences and then being able to leverage those experiences across other businesses. That I find really inspirational, that you can do that. If you weren't in the industry, you've worked in a few different sectors, what do you think you'd be doing? I think naturally I'd be in some sort of entertainment business, and I don't mean me being the entertainer. I'm not.
Stand up.
I'm not as good as that, but I love people and I love social settings, and I've just got a feeling I'd be involved with something that was very people and entertainment and fun centric. I really don't know what that is, but I'd like to be out there with people enjoying themselves. You've worked on some really good brands throughout your career. Is there any brands that you'd love to have a crack at now, being on the agency side? Then you sort of think, well, I'd love to get my teeth into that one. That's a great one. I think from a fun point of view, a very personal point of view, I'd love to get a sporting brand, you know, a club of some kind, a football or a rugby club, and I still, you know, there's so much opportunity to entertain and to engage people, but I still think they're very distant from people. And, you know, I'd love to have a crack at something really difficult like a financial brand or something, maybe a bank or something, and just see how much damage you could do. And I'm sure it's highly restricted, as everybody says, but yeah, I just love to have a crack at bringing some personality to something that doesn't seem to have any personality.
You don't have to sort of give me the answer to this one, but sort of in terms of pitches you've been involved in, has there been any sort of funniest moments for you on one side of the fence and on the other side, the most awkward moment or thing that sort of comes to haunt you, or any sort of memory you think, oh, that was a funny one?
I've been in an amazing situation where somebody within our team, a senior member of our team, as a client, fell asleep during a pitch. That wasn't the brightest moment for either us or for particularly the agency that were involved. I've been involved in a couple of pitches where, again, client side, where materials have just not turned up, so things were shipped there, and the agency had to just fess up and say, I'm sorry, but we did have lots of really cool stuff, but we're just going to have to talk you through it, which is very cringy. I've had one agency walk out during a pitch, halfway through, and say, really sorry, but this isn't for us, which I thought was actually quite brave, and actually saved us a whole load of time, and wish they'd done it for themselves before then, but you know, I think it was quite brave. I didn't think that was a bad thing. So yeah, a few stories there.
If you had a magic wand, could grant you a wish, what would you change, if anything, about the industry? Having seen both sides, Paul, you know, there's not enough people who've worked both sides and truly understand both sides. So my magic one would be that everybody understood what it was really like to be the other side of the fence, truly. So just quick fire round now, a couple of questions. Favourite current brand?
Timberland.
Really? Okay. All-time fave? I don't know if it's the same answer.
Fave brand, all time. Ben Sherman.
Double espresso or green tea?
Oh, green tea.
Brightest person you've worked with? That's going to upset a few people, is it? Maybe. Or not?
Yeah, I'll say Beth Barry. That'll keep me safe.
Most creative person you've worked with?
That's a really good question.
I'll come back to that one.
Yeah, do.
Independent or network?
Independent.
Money or happiness?
Happiness every time.
Back to the most creative person you work with.
I can't remember his name, but it was our creative director at Ogilvy when we ran the Huggies brand. So if you could just put creative director Ogilvy, circa 1998, that would do it.
Twist or stick?
Twist.
Thank you very much, Jon.